On a freezing night, a barefoot girl enters a store asking for diapers to save her baby brother. With no money, she faces a stranger and makes a heartbreaking promise. "I swear I'll pay you back when I grow up." The man, a lonely millionaire, is deeply moved by this unlikely scene. And without knowing it, he begins a journey that will forever change 3 lives, including his own. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. The December wind howled through the streets of Chicago like a hungry wolf, its icy teeth biting into anything that dared to brave the night. Snow fell in thick, heavy flakes, building miniature mountains on the sidewalks and turning the city into a treacherous winter wonderland. Most people were safely tucked away in their warm homes, but beneath the Harrison Street overpass, 8-year-old Lily Collins huddled closer to her mother, trying to generate enough warmth for them both. "Mommy, Noah needs clean diapers," Lily whispered, her breath forming tiny clouds in the frigid air. She glanced down at her baby brother, just 8 months, old, whimpering in his sleep. The makeshift shelter they called home consisted of cardboard walls reinforced with plastic tarps, a far cry from the apartment they'd left 3 months ago when Eric, her mother's ex-boyfriend and Noah's father, had escalated from verbal abuse to something far more dangerous. Jessica Collins, once a respected house cleaner for wealthy families in Chicago's Gold Coast neighborhood, stared blankly at the concrete wall. At 28, she looked a decade older, her once vibrant eyes now vacant, lost in the fog of post-traumatic stress that had consumed her since escaping Eric's control. Tonight was one of her bad nights, when the memories pulled her so deep, inside herself, that she couldn't respond to the outside world. "Mommy?" Lily tried again, gently shaking her mother's shoulder. "Noah needs diapers, can you hear me?" No response, just that 1,000-yard stare that frightened Lily more than Eric's shouting ever had. She'd learned to recognize these episodes when her mother retreated so far into herself that Lily became the adult, the caretaker, the decision-maker. Noah's whimpers turned to cries, his discomfort growing more urgent. Lily checked their supplies. The last diaper had been used hours ago, and the $20 hidden in her mother's shoe was meant for food tomorrow. But Noah couldn't wait until morning. "I'll be right back, Mommy," Lily said, tucking the blanket tighter around her mother and brother. "I'm going to get diapers for Noah. I promise I'll be careful." She slipped her feet into her mother's worn sneakers. Far too big, but better than her own shoes with holes in the soles. The convenience store 2 blocks away stayed open all night. Lily had been there before with her mother, had memorized the prices of the items they needed most often. The journey through the snow-covered streets felt like crossing an Arctic wilderness. Lily's thin jacket provided little protection against the biting cold, and her feet, even in her mother's shoes, grew numb with each step. By the time she reached the fluorescent glow of Miller's 24-hour mart, she could no longer feel her toes. The bell above the door jingled as she entered, bringing warmth and the smell of coffee. Behind the counter, Sam Miller, the middle-aged owner, looked up from his magazine with a frown. "Where are your parents, kid?" he asked, taking in her disheveled appearance. The 2 big shoes, the thin jacket crusted with snow, the determined expression on her young face. "My mom is sick," Lily replied, her voice small but steady. "My baby brother needs diapers, really bad. He's only 8 months old." Sam's frown deepened. "You got money?" Lily hesitated, then shook her head. "No, sir, but I promise I'll pay you back when I grow up. I really will. My brother is crying and his skin is getting all red and hurting him." "Listen, kid, I can't just give stuff away. This is a business, not a charity," Sam began, his tone softening despite his words. The bell jingled again, and a tall man in an expensive overcoat entered, stomping snow from his polished leather shoes. Robert Westfield, CEO of Westfield Investments, had stopped for coffee on his way home from a late meeting. At 45, his once dark hair was now threaded with silver at the temples, and fine lines had formed at the corners of his eyes that hadn't truly smiled in the 10 years since his wife Eleanor's passing. "Please," Lily continued, unaware of the newcomer, "I just need the smallest pack of diapers and maybe some wipes. I promise I'll work and pay you back every penny." Robert paused, coffee forgotten as he observed the exchange. The girl couldn't be more than 8 or 9, clearly impoverished, her small body shivering despite the store's heating. Something about her determined stance, the adult responsibility weighing on such small shoulders, struck a chord deep within him. "Put it on my tab, Sam," Robert said, approaching the counter. "Whatever she needs." Both Sam and Lily turned in. Surprise. Lily's eyes widened as she took in the man's expensive clothes and kind face. "Sir, you don't have to," Sam began. "I insist," Robert interrupted. He turned to Lily. "What else does your brother need besides diapers and wipes?" Lily hesitated, suspicion warring with desperate need. "Maybe some formula, and I haven't eaten since yesterday morning." Robert nodded, his throat tight with an emotion he hadn't felt in years. "Get a cart," he said gently. "We'll get everything you need." 15 minutes later, Lily had selected diapers, wipes, formula, baby food, bread, peanut butter, fruit, and a gallon of milk. Robert added a warm hat, gloves, and thick socks to the pile when Lily wasn't looking. "Where do you live?" Robert asked as Sam bagged their purchases. Lily clutched the bags protectively. "Under the Harrison Street Bridge," she admitted reluctantly. "But I can carry these. Thank you for helping us." Robert glanced outside at the blizzard conditions. "You can't walk back in this weather. Let me drive you." Fear flashed across Lily's face. "My mom says never to go with strangers." "Your mom is right," Robert acknowledged. "How about this? I'll drive you, but Sam here will come with us to make sure you're safe. Then we'll both know where you and your brother are if you need help again." Sam, who had known Robert as a regular customer for years, nodded in agreement. "I can close up for 20 minutes. The kid shouldn't be out in this storm." Reluctantly, Lily agreed. As they drove through the deserted streets in Robert's luxury SUV, she directed them to the overpass, where a small collection of makeshift shelters huddled against the concrete supports. "That one?" Lily pointed to a structure slightly apart from the others, reinforced with blue tarps. Robert parked, and they all trudged through the snow carrying the bags. When Lily pulled back the tarp door, the sight inside stole Robert's breath. A young woman sat motionless, cradling a wailing infant, her eyes unfocused and vacant despite the child's cries. The space was meticulously organized despite its poverty, a testament to Lily's efforts to create order in chaos. "Mommy, I'm back," Lily said, rushing to take the baby. "I brought diapers for Noah and some food. This nice man helped us." Jessica didn't respond, didn't even seem to register their presence. Noah's cries intensified, his little face red with discomfort and hunger. "She gets like this sometimes," Lily explained matter-of-factly as she expertly changed her brother's diaper on a folded blanket. "Since we left Eric, the doctor called it PTSD before we couldn't go anymore." Robert exchanged glances with Sam, who looked equally disturbed by the situation. "Lily," Robert said carefully, kneeling to her level, "it's too cold for you to stay here tonight. There's a hotel nearby where you, your mom, and Noah could have a warm room. Would you let me help with that just for tonight while the storm passes?" Lily looked up from feeding her brother, her young face marked with a wisdom no child should possess. "Why would you help us? You don't even know us." Robert thought of his empty penthouse apartment, of the decades spent accumulating wealth while feeling nothing. He thought of Eleanor and the children they'd never had despite years of trying. "Because," he said simply, "everyone needs help sometimes. Tonight you need help. Tomorrow maybe I will." After long consideration, Lily nodded. "Okay, but just for tonight. And I'm still going to pay you back someday. I promise." As they gathered the few belongings worth salvaging, Robert wondered what he was getting himself into. He couldn't have known that this moment, this simple act of kindness on a snowy Chicago night, would be the first step on a journey that would transform not just this broken family, but his own shattered life as well. The Lakeside Hotel wasn't luxurious by Robert's standards, but its clean rooms and functioning heaters made it a palace compared to the underpass shelter. Robert booked 2 adjoining rooms, one for Jessica and the children, and one for himself, close enough to help if needed, but respecting their privacy. Lily cradled Noah protectively as they entered the room, her eyes wide at the sight of The 2 queen beds, television and private bathroom. Jessica followed mechanically, responding to gentle physical guidance, but still trapped within the prison of her mind. The bathroom has hot water, Robert explained to Lily. Would you like to take a warm bath? Lily hesitated, looking at her brother and mother with concern. I need to take care of Noah first, and Mom needs help too. Robert nodded, respecting her priorities. I'll order some food while you take care of them. Is there anything specific you'd like? Chicken soup for Mom, Lily replied without hesitation. It's her favorite when she's having a bad day. While they waited for room service, Robert helped Lily settle Noah, now clean and fed, into a makeshift crib fashioned from cushions and towels. The baby, comfortable for the first time in hours, drifted off to sleep almost immediately. Jessica sat on the edge of the bed, still unresponsive. Lily approached her mother with practiced care. Mommy, it's time to get warm, she said, gently removing Jessica's dirty coat. We're safe here tonight. Robert watched in amazement as the 8-year-old methodically cleaned her mother's face with a warm washcloth, brushed her tangled hair, and coaxed her into drinking water. The role reversal was heartbreaking. A child caring for the adult who should have been protecting her. You're very good at taking care of your family, Robert observed quietly. Lily shrugged. Mom takes care of us when she can. She's just sick right now. She was really good at her job before, cleaning houses for rich people. She remembers all the special ways to make things nice. When the food arrived, the aroma of chicken soup seemed to penetrate Jessica's fog slightly. Her eyes focused briefly on the steaming bowl Lily placed in her hands. That's good, Mom, Lily encouraged. Eat a little bit. You'll feel better. As they ate, Robert learned more about their situation. Eric Thompson, Noah's father, had been Jessica's boyfriend for 3 years. The abuse had started subtly, controlling behavior, isolation, verbal attacks, but escalated dramatically after Noah's birth. Jessica had fled with the children when Eric, in a drunken rage, had threatened the baby. With nowhere to go and limited resources, they'd ended up homeless. Mom was getting better for a while, Lily explained between bites of her burger. She found a job at a laundromat, and we were saving for an apartment. But then Eric found us there. He didn't see us, but Mom saw him and she got really scared. She quit that day and we moved to a different spot under the bridge. That's when she started having more bad days. Robert listened, anger building at the man who had terrorized this family, but careful not to show it and frighten Lily. Has your mum seen a doctor for her bad days? We went to a free clinic a few times. They gave her medicine, but it ran out, and we couldn't go back because Mum was afraid Eric would find us there too. After dinner, Lily finally agreed to take a bath. Robert waited in the doorway of the adjoining room, leaving the door ajar in case they needed anything. He heard splashing, and for the first time the sound of Lily giggling like the child she was as she discovered the complimentary bubble bath. The contrast between the cheerful child in the bathroom and the haunted woman sitting motionless on the bed troubled him deeply. Jessica Collins was clearly intelligent and capable when not in the grip of her trauma. The evidence was in her remarkable daughter. What would happen to these children if Jessica couldn't recover? Robert's phone vibrated with messages from his assistant about tomorrow's meetings, but for once he ignored them. Instead, he made calls to contacts who owed him favors: a psychiatrist specializing in trauma, a security consultant, a social worker who understood the system's flaws. By the time Lily emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in a hotel robe, several sizes too large, Robert had the beginnings of a plan. Lily, he said carefully, I'd like to help your family for more than just tonight. Suspicion immediately clouded her features. Why? What do you want? The question, so adult and wary from such a young child, broke something in Robert's carefully constructed emotional walls. 10 years of isolation since Eleanor's passing had left him merely existing, not living. His wealth had grown while his humanity withered. Now faced with this child's raw need and fierce protection of her family, he felt truly awake for the first time in a decade. I don't want anything from you, he answered truthfully. But I have an empty apartment building I inherited from my parents. The units need some work. but one could be fixed up quickly. You could stay there while your mom gets proper treatment." Lily's eyes widened, but the wariness remained. "We can't pay rent." "You don't need to. Consider it borrowed, like the diapers. When you grow up and become successful, you can help someone else who needs it." The little girl studied him intently, her young mind weighing impossible adult decisions. "What about Eric? He's still looking for us?" "I have friends who can help with security," Robert assured her, "and there are programs that can help your mum get legal protection." A small spark of hope flickered in Lily's eyes, quickly suppressed. "I'll have to ask Mum when she's better. She doesn't trust people easily anymore." "That's fair," Robert nodded. "The offer will still be there when she's ready to discuss it." As Lily climbed into bed beside her sleeping brother, exhaustion finally overtaking her vigilance, she asked, "Why are you alone, Mr. Westfield? Don't you have a family?" The innocent question caught Robert off guard. "I had a wife once, Eleanor. She left us 10 years ago. We wanted children but couldn't have them." "That's sad," Lily murmured, her eyelids growing heavy. "Everyone should have a family." Robert sat in the chair by the window long after Lily fell asleep, watching over the small family. Jessica eventually lay down beside her children, still fully clothed, her body curled protectively around them, even in her dissociative state. Morning brought a shift in Jessica's condition. Robert, who had dozed in the chair, awoke to find her, sitting upright, her eyes clear and alert, watching him with unmistakable fear and suspicion. "Who are you?" she demanded in a hoarse whisper, careful not to wake the children. "What do you want with us?" Robert raised his hands slightly, a non-threatening gesture. "My name is Robert Westfield. Your daughter came into a store last night looking for diapers for the baby. I paid for them and brought you all here because of the storm." Jessica's eyes darted around the room, assessing escape routes. "I don't know you. We don't need charity." "Mom?" Lily's sleepy voice interrupted as she rubbed her eyes. "Mr. Westfield helped us. He bought food and diapers for Noah, and he has an apartment where we could stay. He's nice." Jessica pulled her daughter close. "Lily, we've talked about strangers. We can't trust—" "I know, Mom," Lily interrupted with surprising firmness. "But Noah was crying and you were having a bad day and it was snowing really hard. Mr. Westfield could have done bad things, but he didn't. He just helped." Robert watched the silent communication between mother and daughter, Jessica's fear warring with Lily's determined trust. He recognized the moment when Jessica's maternal instinct to protect her children by fleeing conflicted with her recognition that they needed help to survive. "We'll leave after breakfast," Jessica finally said, her voice stronger but still wary. "Thank you for your help, Mr. Westfield, but we'll be fine on our own." Robert nodded, respecting her decision while knowing he couldn't allow this family to return to life under a bridge. For the first time in 10 years, he felt a purpose greater than making money or merely surviving another day. "I understand," he said simply. "Breakfast will be here soon, and whenever you're ready, my offer of help still stands. No strings attached." The battle lines were drawn, Jessica's fierce independence and deep distrust against Robert's newfound determination to help this family heal. Neither could have predicted how their collision course would transform them all in the months to come. 3 weeks had passed since that snowy December night, and against all odds, Jessica had reluctantly accepted Robert's offer of temporary housing. The apartment, located in a modest building in Rogers Park that Robert had inherited years ago but never bothered to sell, was sparsely furnished but clean, warm, and secure. Most importantly, it was anonymous. The lease paperwork filed under Robert's company rather than Jessica's name, the building equipped with a modern security system, and the neighbors primarily working-class families who minded their own business. For Jessica, accepting help had been excruciating. She'd only agreed after a night when Noah developed a high fever, and the reality of what could happen to her children if they remained homeless in the Chicago winter had finally outweighed her paralyzing fear of dependence. "This is temporary," she had insisted repeatedly, both to Robert and herself. 3 months maximum, just until I can get back on my feet." Robert had agreed without argument, recognizing that pushing would only strengthen her resistance. Instead, he focused on tangible, practical support. that Jessica couldn't reasonably refuse for her children's sake, enrolling Lily in the local elementary school, arranging for Noah's pediatric checkups, and most crucially, connecting Jessica with Dr. Abigail Chen, a trauma specialist who had agreed to provide therapy sessions on a sliding scale. Jessica's first therapy session had been a disaster. She'd attended only because Robert had arranged for a sitter for Noah, and Lily had practically pushed her out the door. She'd sat rigid and silent in Dr. Chen's office for 50 minutes, then returned to the apartment and immediately packed their meager belongings. "We're leaving," she'd announced to Lily, who had just returned from her second day at her new school. "This was a mistake. We can't trust these people." Lily, displaying wisdom beyond her years, had placed herself between her mother and the door. "Mom, Noah is finally getting better. I like my new school. Please, can we stay just a little longer? You promised we'd try for 3 months." The standoff had lasted nearly an hour before Jessica's resistance crumbled, not in the face of her daughter's logic, but at the sight of Noah, peacefully sleeping in an actual crib for the first time in months, his cheeks finally gaining healthy color after his illness. That night, Jessica had experienced the first of many breakdowns that would mark her healing journey. Robert, who had taken to checking in each evening, had arrived to find Lily trying to comfort her sobbing mother on the kitchen floor. "I can't do this," Jessica had wept, walls finally crumbling. "I can't be what they need. I'm broken." "You're not broken," Robert had said, kneeling beside them despite his expensive suit. "You're wounded. There's a difference." The next day, Jessica had returned to Dr. Chen, this time ready to begin the painful work of healing. Now, 3 weeks into their new arrangement, fragile routines had begun to form. Lily thrived at school, revealing an exceptional aptitude for writing that had already caught her teacher's attention. Noah, properly nourished and receiving regular medical care, had transformed from a listless, underweight infant to a chubby, babbling baby who lit up whenever his sister entered the room. Jessica's progress was less linear, but equally significant. The combination of proper medication, twice-weekly therapy, and the basic security of stable housing had allowed her to function beyond mere survival for the first time in years. There were still bad days, moments when shadows seemed to move like threatening figures, when a car backfiring sent her into trembling panic, when memories ambushed her without warning, but they were becoming less frequent, less debilitating. This particular evening, Robert arrived at the apartment carrying groceries and a carefully selected book for Lily. These visits had become a highlight of his day, a sharp contrast to the empty silence of his luxury penthouse. "Mr. Westfield," Lily exclaimed, rushing to greet him at the door. "I got an A on my writing assignment. Ms. Peterson said it was the best in the class." "That's wonderful, Lily," Robert smiled, genuinely delighted by her enthusiasm. "I brought you something to celebrate." He handed her a beautifully illustrated collection of short stories. Lily's eyes widened as she ran her fingers reverently over the embossed cover. "Thank you," she whispered, clutching the book to her chest. "I'll take super good care of it." Jessica emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her appearance had improved dramatically, her hair neatly trimmed, her clothes clean and fitting properly thanks to a modest wardrobe Robert had insisted was part of the housing arrangement. But the most striking change was in her eyes, which now held a cautious awareness rather than vacant fear. "You didn't need to bring groceries again," she said by way of greeting, though her tone lacked the defensive edge it had carried weeks earlier. "I told you we're managing the food budget." "Force of habit," Robert replied easily. "My assistant ordered too much for my place again. It would just go to waste." It was a transparent fiction they both maintained. Robert's way of providing additional support without challenging Jessica's fierce independence, and Jessica's way of accepting help without acknowledging how much she still needed it. "Noah's already down for the night," Jessica continued, taking the grocery bags. "He's finally sleeping through until morning." "That's progress," Robert smiled, removing his coat. "And how was therapy today?" Jessica paused, considering his question with the seriousness it deserved. "Hard. We started talking about the first time, Eric. The first incident. Dr. Chen says I need to process it to move forward, but sometimes I feel like I'm just reopening wounds that were starting to scab over. Healing isn't linear, Robert offered, repeating what he'd heard Dr. Chen explain during the one session Jessica had allowed him to attend. Some days you move forward, some days back. Jessica nodded, then surprised him by adding, Dr. Chen thinks I should consider joining a support group for survivors. There's one that meets at the community center on Thursdays. They have childcare. That sounds promising, Robert replied carefully, recognizing the magnitude of Jessica considering group interaction. Would you like me to watch Noah that evening instead? If you'd be more comfortable with someone he knows. Something flickered across Jessica's face. Gratitude mingled with wariness, as though kindness itself had become suspect in her experience. Maybe. I'll think about it. While Jessica put away the groceries, Robert sat with Lily at the small dining table where she was completing her homework. He marveled at how quickly she'd caught up with her classmates, despite months of missed schooling. Her intelligence was remarkable, but even more impressive was her determination. Mom's having a good week, Lily informed him quietly, her pencil moving steadily across her math worksheet. She only had one nightmare, and she didn't go to the quiet place at all. The quiet place was Lily's term for her mother's dissociative episodes. Robert nodded, respecting the child's assessment. Lily was more attuned to Jessica's mental state than any doctor could be. That's excellent progress, he agreed. And how are you doing? Making friends at school? Lily shrugged. Some kids are nice. Some make fun of my clothes, even though they're new now. There's a girl named Madison who sits with me at lunch, though. She likes writing stories, too. Friends take time, Robert assured her. When I was your age, I was terrible at making them. Too busy reading books. Really? Lily looked up, genuinely surprised that this confident, successful adult had ever struggled with anything. Really? Robert confirmed. I was the awkward kid with glasses who always had his nose in a book. It wasn't until high school that I found my people. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden crash from the kitchen. Robert was on his feet instantly, Lily right behind him. They found Jessica frozen beside the refrigerator, a broken jar of pasta sauce at her feet, red liquid splattered across the floor, and her shoes. Jessica, Robert approached cautiously, recognizing the vacant expression returning to her eyes. It's just sauce, everything's okay. But Jessica wasn't seeing sauce. In her mind, she was back in that final confrontation with Eric, when thrown objects and broken glass had preceded his most violent outburst. Her breathing came in short, panicked gasps, her hands trembling violently. Mom, Lily said firmly, stepping between Robert and Jessica. Mom, look at me. You're in our apartment. Eric isn't here. You're safe. Jessica's eyes slowly focused on her daughter's face. Lily? It's just spaghetti sauce, Lily continued in the same calm, mature tone. I'll help you clean it up. Remember what Dr. Chen taught you. Name 5 things you can see right now. Robert watched in awe as the 8-year-old talked her mother through the grounding technique, patiently waiting as Jessica identified objects in the kitchen, her breathing gradually slowing. I'm sorry, Jessica whispered, once the moment had passed, shame coloring her cheeks. It was just so red and the sound. No apologies needed, Robert said gently, already reaching for paper towels. Let me help clean up. As they worked together to wipe up the sauce, Robert noticed Jessica surreptitiously checking the time on the microwave clock, then the calendar hanging on the refrigerator. He recognized the calculation in her eyes, counting down the days until their 3-month agreement would end. Later, after Lily had gone to bed, Jessica approached Robert as he prepared to leave. Why are you doing all this? She asked abruptly. And don't say it's nothing or that anyone would do the same. We both know that's not true. Robert considered his answer carefully. Before I met you and the children, I was just existing, going through motions, making money, attending meetings, filling time. I haven't felt genuinely useful to another human being in 10 years. Jessica studied him, searching for hidden agendas in his expression. You lost someone. My wife, Eleanor, Robert confirmed. We tried for years to have children, multiple miscarriages. The last pregnancy, there were complications. We lost both the baby and Eleanor. Jessica's expression softened slightly. I'm sorry, that's terrible. It was, Robert acknowledged. Afterward, I threw myself into work, built the business into something much bigger, accumulated more wealth than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. But none of it mattered. Nothing did. Until a barefoot kid tried to steal diapers, Jessica asked, a hint of her dry humor emerging. Until a brave little girl promised to pay me back someday, Robert corrected with a small smile. She reminded me that connections matter more than possessions, that a promise can be worth more than a portfolio. Jessica nodded slowly, her defenses lowering fractionally. Lily has that effect on people. She's been my strength when I couldn't find my own. She shouldn't have to be, Robert said gently. She deserves to be a child. I know, Jessica whispered, tears filling her eyes. That's why I'm trying so hard. For both of them, even when it feels impossible. As Robert drove home that night, the contrast between the modest apartment filled with life and his sterile penthouse had never been more stark. For the first time, he allowed himself to acknowledge the truth. He needed this family as much as they needed him. The healing wasn't one-directional. In helping them rebuild their lives, he was finding pieces of himself long thought lost. What he couldn't know was how quickly this fragile equilibrium would be tested, or how the bonds forming between them would soon face challenges none of them could anticipate. The first signs of spring were beginning to emerge across Chicago, tiny green buds breaking through the lingering patches of snow. Nearly 3 months had passed since that fateful December night, and with the changing season came a sense of renewal for the unlikely family unit that had formed. Jessica had secured a part-time position at a local bookstore, working during school hours while Noah attended a subsidized daycare program. The job was modest, shelving books, processing returns, assisting customers, but it represented an enormous victory in her recovery. Each interaction with a stranger that didn't trigger panic, each paycheck she earned through her own efforts, rebuilt fragments of her shattered confidence. Lily had blossomed at school, her academic abilities earning her a spot in the gifted program. Her writing, in particular, had captured the attention of her teachers, who marveled at the emotional depth and maturity in her stories. More importantly, she had begun to reclaim pieces of her childhood, joining the school's chess club, having occasional playdates with her friend Madison, laughing with the carefree abandon that had been absent for so long. Noah, now nearly a year old, was thriving. He had mastered crawling with lightning speed and was pulling himself up on furniture, babbling constantly in his own private language, with Lily, his approximation of his sister's name, being his first recognizable word. And Robert had become an integral part of their lives, his evening visits evolving from brief check-ins to extended family dinners. He'd cleared his schedule to attend Lily's first school presentation, sat through Noah's pediatric appointments, and even joined Jessica for a session with Dr. Chen to better understand how to support her recovery. The 3-month deadline Jessica had initially imposed had come and gone without mention. The unspoken agreement seemed to be that their arrangement would continue indefinitely, evolving organically as their needs changed. But beneath this picture of steady progress, financial storm clouds were gathering on the horizon. Robert sat in his office at Westfield Investments, staring at the quarterly reports with growing concern. The North American division of Global Tech, one of his largest investment holdings, had experienced a catastrophic data breach affecting millions of YMOM customers. As lawsuits mounted and stock prices plummeted, the financial impact was spreading across Robert's portfolio like poison. The preliminary estimates suggest we could be looking at a 30% devaluation across the affected holdings, explained Thomas Ward, Robert's chief financial officer, his normally unflappable demeanor showing signs of strain. If we don't contain this quickly, the collateral damage could affect even our secure investments. What are our options? Robert asked, flipping through the crisis management proposals. Immediate divestment from the most vulnerable positions, liquidation of certain real estate holdings to maintain cash reserves, and unfortunately, Thomas hesitated, Significant operational cutbacks until the market stabilizes. Robert nodded grimly. He'd weathered financial storms before, but this one came at a particularly vulnerable time. His personal financial commitments had expanded significantly in recent months. The apartment for Jessica and the children, educational funds for Lily, medical expenses not covered by the limited insurance he'd arranged, the salary for the part-time security consultant who monitored for any signs of Eric's reappearance. None of these expenses would normally strain his resources, but combined with the market crisis, difficult decisions loomed. Draft the divestment strategy, Robert instructed. But hold off on the real estate liquidation until we've explored all other options. After Thomas left, Robert remained at his desk, calculating figures with growing frustration. He could weather this crisis personally without major lifestyle changes, but some of his discretionary charitable spending would need to be curtailed, at least temporarily. The thought of scaling back his support for Jessica and the children was unacceptable. Yet financial reality demanded consideration of all expenses. That evening, Robert arrived at the apartment later than usual, the weight of the day's financial concerns visible in his tired eyes and tense posture. Jessica noticed immediately. "Rough day?" she asked as she set the table for dinner. "Just business complications," Robert replied, attempting a reassuring smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Nothing for you to worry about." Jessica's expression shifted, her hard-won perceptiveness detecting the evasion. "Robert, we agreed to be honest with each other. If there's something that affects us, I need to know." Before Robert could respond, Lily burst in from her bedroom, waving a paper excitedly. "Mr. Westfield, I got selected for the citywide writing competition. Ms. Peterson says my essay could win a scholarship." Robert's genuine delight at Lily's accomplishment temporarily pushed aside his financial concerns. "That's wonderful, Lily. I always knew you were a brilliant writer." "The finals are next month," Lily continued breathlessly. "If I win, they publish my story in the actual newspaper and everything. We'll need to get you a new outfit for the ceremony," Jessica smiled, ruffling her daughter's hair. "My little author." Lily's face suddenly fell. "But it costs $50 to register for the finals. Ms. Peterson said there are fee waivers, but you have to apply weeks ago." An awkward silence descended. $50, a sum that would have been completely insignificant to Robert just days ago, and that would still be manageable now, but that represented half a day's wages for Jessica. "I'll cover the registration," Robert said immediately. "No," Jessica countered firmly. "This is something I can and should do for my daughter." She turned to Lily with a warm smile. "I get paid tomorrow, sweetheart. We'll send in your registration first thing." Lily looked between the adults, sensing the underlying tension. "Maybe we could split it," she suggested diplomatically. $25 each. Her innocent solution broke the tension, drawing reluctant smiles from both adults. "That's actually a perfect compromise," Robert agreed, impressed once again by Lily's emotional intelligence. Later, after Lily had gone to bed, Jessica confronted Robert in the kitchen as they cleaned up from dinner. "Something's wrong," she stated flatly, her voice low to avoid waking the children. "And it involves money. Just tell me straight. Are you having second thoughts about helping us?" "Absolutely not," Robert answered emphatically. "It's just, there's been a financial situation with one of my major investments. It's going to require some belt-tightening across the board." Jessica set down the dish she was drying, her posture stiffening. "I see, and we're part of that belt-tightening?" "That's not what I meant," Robert sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'm just saying that things might be tight for a while. The apartment and essential expenses are completely secure, but some of the extras might need to be reconsidered, temporarily." "What extras?" Jessica pressed, old insecurities resurfacing. "My therapy, Lily's after-school programs, Noah's developmental checkups." "None of those," Robert assured her. "Those are necessities, not extras." "Then what?" Robert hesitated. "I was thinking more along the lines of the weekend trips, the theater tickets, the restaurant dinners. All the things that make you feel good about helping the charity cases," Jessica concluded, her voice taking on an edge Robert hadn't heard in weeks. "The fun parts of playing savior." That's not fair, and you know it, Robert replied, hurt by the accusation. I've never seen you or the children as charity cases. Jessica wrapped her arms around herself. The defensive posture Dr. Chen had worked so hard to help her overcome returning instantly. Maybe this is for the best. We've become too dependent on you. The original agreement was 3 months, and we've passed that. Jessica, please don't do this, Robert said quietly. Don't use this temporary setback as an excuse to push me away just when you're making real progress. Progress? Jessica laughed bitterly. I still have nightmares almost every night. I still jump at loud noises. I still check the locks 3 times before I can sleep. The only difference is I've gotten better at hiding it. That's not true, Robert countered. Dr. Chen says your recovery has been remarkable, considering the severity of your trauma. You're working again, you're connecting with people, you're present for your children. Jessica turned away, tears threatening. And all of that could disappear in an instant if your financial support does. Do you understand how terrifying that is? To build a life on a foundation that could be pulled away at any moment? The raw vulnerability in her voice cut through Robert's defenses. He hadn't considered how his financial concerns would trigger Jessica's deepest fears of abandonment and instability. The foundation isn't going anywhere, he promised softly. Whatever happens with my investments, you and the children are my priority. We might need to adjust some things temporarily, but I will never abandon you. Jessica wiped away an escaped tear, embarrassed by her emotional reaction. You can't. Promise that. Nobody can. I learned that the hard way with Eric. I'm not Eric, Robert said firmly. No, you're not, Jessica acknowledged, her voice steadying. But I need to be prepared for all possibilities. If your financial situation is changing, I need to accelerate my plans for independence. What does that mean exactly? It means I'll increase my hours at the bookstore. Maybe look for a second job in the evenings. After the kids are asleep, cut all non-essential expenses. Robert's heart sank at the thought of Jessica working herself to exhaustion, undoing months of careful recovery. That's not necessary. My situation isn't that dire. Maybe not now, Jessica insisted, but I need to be ready if it becomes dire. I can't risk the children's stability again. Before Robert could respond, a small voice interrupted from the hallway. Are you fighting about money? Lily stood in her pajamas, her expression serious beyond her years. Because I don't need to do the writing competition. We can save the $50. Jessica immediately knelt before her daughter. No, sweetheart, the competition is important and you absolutely will participate. Mr. Westfield and I were just discussing grown-up budget things. Like when you used to count pennies for milk? Lily asked, the innocent question revealing how much financial insecurity the child had already witnessed in her young life. No, nothing like that, Robert assured her, joining Jessica at the child's level. We have everything we need. I promise. Lily looked unconvinced. Madison's parents got divorced because they fought about money all the time. Are you getting divorced? The question caught both adults off guard, highlighting the familial role Robert had unconsciously assumed in the children's lives. Mr. Westfield and I aren't married, Lily, Jessica explained gently. We're friends who help each other. But he comes over every day and he helps with Noah and he makes you smile sometimes, Lily reasoned with a child's direct logic. That's what daddies do. An awkward silence fell between the adults, neither knowing how to address the complicated emotions Lily's observation raised. It's past your bedtime, sweetheart, Jessica finally said, redirecting the conversation. Let's get you tucked in again. After Jessica had settled Lily back to sleep, she returned to find Robert staring out the apartment window, his expression troubled. She sees you as a father figure, Jessica stated the obvious. I should have anticipated that and been more careful about boundaries. Is it really so terrible, Robert asked quietly, that she feels that way? Jessica joined him at the window, maintaining a careful distance. It's not terrible. It's natural given how present you've been, but it's also complicated. Because of her real father. Lily's biological father left before she was born. Jessica clarified. He was never in the picture. Eric was only Noah's father, though he was in Lily's life for 3 years. Robert nodded, processing this new information. Still, I understand your concern. Children form attachments easily, and disappointment can be devastating. Exactly, Jessica sighed. And with our future so uncertain, it doesn't have to. Be uncertain, Robert interrupted, turning to face her. What if we formalized our arrangement, a legal agreement that guarantees housing and educational support for the children, regardless of any financial fluctuations on my part? Jessica stared at him, genuinely surprised by the suggestion. You would do that? Legally commit to supporting children who aren't yours? They may not be mine biologically, but I care about them deeply. Robert hesitated, then added quietly, I care about all of you. The implication hung in the air between them, an unspoken acknowledgement that his feelings had evolved beyond mere charitable concern or friendly support. Jessica broke eye contact first, overwhelmed by the direction the conversation had taken. I need time to think about this. It's a lot to process. Of course, Robert agreed, reaching for his coat. Take all the time you need, but please know that my financial concerns don't change my commitment to you and the children. We'll figure this out together. As Robert drove home that night, his mind raced with contingency plans. The financial crisis at work was serious but manageable with the right strategy. What troubled him more was the realization of just how intertwined his life had become with Jessica and her children, and how much he dreaded the thought of losing them. Meanwhile, Jessica sat on the edge of Lily's bed, watching her daughter sleep peacefully. The stability they'd built felt suddenly precarious, balanced on the goodwill of a man who, despite his apparent sincerity, could walk away at any time. The thought of returning to their previous existence, of Lily losing her school, of Noah losing proper medical care, of herself losing the therapeutic support that had begun to heal her fractured psyche, was unbearable. For the first time in months, Jessica retrieved the small emergency bag she kept packed at the back of her closet, a habit from her days with Eric when a quick escape might be necessary. The meager savings she'd managed to accumulate wouldn't last long, but perhaps it would be enough to establish themselves somewhere new if Robert's support evaporated. What neither Jessica nor Robert could have anticipated was how quickly their financial concerns would be overshadowed by a far more immediate threat, one that had been watching and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Spring had fully blossomed across Chicago by the time of the citywide writing competition finals. The previous weeks had been tense as Robert navigated his financial crisis, while Jessica battled her resurging insecurities. A fragile truce had formed between them. Neither mentioned the emergency bag Jessica kept packed, nor the legal agreement Robert had proposed. Instead, they focused on maintaining normalcy for the children's sake. The day of Lily's competition dawned bright and clear. She had spent weeks perfecting her essay titled, What Makes a Real Family?, a deeply personal exploration of her experiences that had moved her teachers to tears during practice readings. Are you nervous? Robert asked, as they drove to the downtown library where the competition was being held. He glanced in the rear-view mirror at Lily, dressed in her best outfit, a simple blue dress Jessica had carefully altered to fit perfectly. A little, Lily admitted, clutching her folder. What if I forget parts when I'm reading it? You won't, Jessica assured her from the passenger seat, reaching back to squeeze her daughter's hand. You've practiced so many times you could recite it in your sleep, but even if you do forget something, it doesn't matter. The words are yours and you can find them again. Noah babbled happily from his car seat, oblivious to the importance of the day, but absorbing the excited energy around him. The Chicago Public Library's grand event hall was filled with families, teachers, and local media when they arrived. Lily's eyes widened at the sight of the audience, her confidence momentarily faltering. There are so many people, she whispered, shrinking against Jessica's side. All here to hear amazing stories like yours, Robert encouraged, kneeling to her level. Remember what we practiced. Look at the back wall if the faces make you nervous. Jessica watched their interaction with mixed emotions. She couldn't deny the positive influence Robert had become in Lily's life, providing a steady male presence. That balanced Jessica's more anxious parenting with calm reassurance. Yet the underlying uncertainty of their arrangement cast a shadow over these moments, making her wonder if she was setting her daughter up for devastating disappointment. As the competition began, they found seats near the front. Noah settled contentedly on Robert's lap. The children's division went first, with 10 finalists from schools across Chicago presenting their work. Lily was scheduled last, a position her teacher had assured them was advantageous, as the judges would remember her piece most clearly. The other children's essays were impressive, stories about community service projects, environmental initiatives, cultural heritage celebrations. With each polished presentation, Jessica felt Lily's tension increase beside her. "They're all so good," Lily whispered anxiously. "Mine is just about us." "That's exactly why yours is special," Jessica murmured back. "It's real." Finally, Lily's name was called. She stood, smoothed her dress with trembling hands, and walked to the podium. For a terrifying moment she froze, staring at the audience with wide eyes. Jessica held her breath, preparing to rush forward if necessary. Then Lily's gaze found her mother and Robert in the front row. Noah waved chubby hands at his sister, breaking the tension with his innocent enthusiasm. Lily's shoulders relaxed, and she began to read. What Makes a Real Family? By Lily Collins, age 8. 3 months ago, I didn't know the answer to this question. I thought a real family was something you saw on TV. A mom, a dad, a nice house with matching furniture, and everyone always smiling. My family wasn't like that. We were just me, my mom, and my baby brother Noah, trying to stay warm under a bridge when the snow came. On the coldest night in December, Noah needed diapers really bad. Mom was having one of her quiet days when she goes away inside herself, because of the bad memories. So I put on her shoes and walked to the store by myself. I didn't have money, but I promised the store owner I would pay him back when I grew up. That night, I learned that sometimes a family is made from promises, not just the ones you keep, but the ones other people make to you when you need help the most. A kind man bought diapers for Noah and gave us a warm place to stay. He could have just walked away, but he didn't. He kept coming back to make sure we were okay. For a while, I was scared to trust him. Mom taught me to be careful of strangers because of what happened before. But this man was different. He didn't want anything from us, he just wanted to help. Now I know that a real family isn't about having the same last name or living in a perfect house. A real family is people who choose each other every day, even when it's hard. It's the people who stay when everyone else leaves. It's the people who see you at your worst and still think you're wonderful. My mom is the strongest person I know. Even when she's scared or sad, she never stops trying to make things better for me and Noah. She works so hard to heal her heart, so she can be the mom we need. Noah is the bravest baby in the world. He smiles even when he's sick, and he learns new things every day, even though his start in life was really hard. And Mr. Robert became part of our family not because he had to, but because he wanted to. He shows me that good people still exist in the world, and that sometimes help comes from places you never expected. So what makes a real family? It's not about perfect lives or never having problems. It's about standing together when the world feels dark. It's about believing in each other when it's hard to believe in yourself. It's about making promises and keeping them no matter what. My family might not look like the ones on TV, but it's real, and that makes it the best family in the world. By the time Lily finished reading, there wasn't a dry eye in the audience. Jessica clutched Noah tightly, tears streaming down her face at hearing their struggles and resilience, articulated through her daughter's innocent wisdom. Beside her, Robert sat motionless, visibly moved by Lily's words and the public acknowledgement of his place in their lives. The applause was thunderous. Lily stood uncertainly at the podium until the moderator came to guide her back to her seat, whispering words of congratulation that made her blush with pride. When the winners were announced 30 minutes later, Lily's essay had earned first place by unanimous decision. The prize included a $500 educational savings bond, publication in the Chicago Tribune's Sunday edition, and an invitation to read at the mayor's annual literacy fundraiser. "I can't believe I won," Lily kept repeating as they celebrated over ice cream afterward. "They really liked it." "They loved it," Robert assured her, his usual reserve softened by emotion, "because it came from your heart." "And now everyone will read it in the newspaper," Jessica added, pride overwhelming her. "Typical caution. Your words will touch so many people, Lily." None of them could have predicted just how many people would be touched by Lily's essay, or that one reader in particular would recognize the thinly disguised details of their situation with dangerous consequences. 2 days later, Lily's essay appeared in the Sunday Tribune's special section on youth writing. By Monday morning, the piece had been shared thousands of times on social media, with parents, teachers, and community leaders praising the 8-year-old's profound understanding of family bonds. Local television stations requested interviews, which Jessica politely declined, protective of her daughter's privacy despite the positive attention. Robert's financial situation had begun to stabilize thanks to aggressive intervention strategies, allowing him to refocus on the family without the shadow of economic uncertainty. He'd even begun tentative discussions with Jessica about a more permanent living arrangement, perhaps a house in a good school district where the children could put down roots. The future looked brighter than it had in months, until Wednesday afternoon when Jessica received a call from Lily's school. "Mrs. Collins, this is Principal Grayson from Lincoln Elementary. There was an incident today I need to discuss with you immediately." Jessica's heart raced. "Is Lily hurt? What happened?" "Lily is fine physically, but quite shaken. A man attempted to remove her from the playground during recess, claiming to be a relative. When questioned by our staff, he became belligerent and fled before security could detain him. Lily recognized him and became extremely distressed." The blood drained from Jessica's face. "What did he look like?" "Tall, muscular build, blonde hair, beard. Lily identified him as Noah's dad. I believe you have him listed as a restricted contact in your paperwork." "Eric," Jessica whispered, her worst fear confirmed. "I'll be right there. Please don't let Lily out of your sight." Her hands shook so badly she could barely dial Robert's number. When he answered, all she could manage was, "Eric found us. He tried to take Lily from school." Robert's response was immediate and decisive. "I'm sending a security team to the school right now. Go get Lily, then go directly to the apartment. Pack only essentials. I'll meet you there in 30 minutes. Don't open the door for anyone but me." Jessica moved on autopilot, calling a rideshare service to take her to the school since she didn't trust herself to drive. Her mind raced with terrifying possibilities. If Eric had found Lily at school, he could find Noah at daycare, he could be watching the apartment, he could be anywhere. At the school, she found Lily in the counselor's office, pale and withdrawn. When Jessica entered, Lily launched herself into her mother's arms with a sob. "He said he was going to take me to see Noah," Lily cried. "He said you were waiting in his car, but he smelled like the bad smell, and I remembered what you taught me about not going with anyone, even if they say they know you." Jessica held her daughter tightly, pride mingling with terror. "You did exactly right, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you for remembering." The school principal approached cautiously. "Mrs. Collins, the police have been notified. They'd like to speak with you and Lily." "Not now," Jessica replied firmly. "We need to get somewhere safe first. I'll contact them once we're secure." The security team Robert had sent, 2 plainclothes professionals with military precision, escorted them to a waiting SUV with tinted windows. One man remained at the school to coordinate with police, while the other drove them to collect Noah from daycare, and then to the apartment. Robert was waiting when they arrived, his face grim but composed. "Everything's ready. We'll leave, Asmar. Soon as you've packed." Jessica didn't waste time asking questions. She quickly gathered essential clothing, medications, and the children's favorite comfort items, while Robert secured their important documents in a waterproof portfolio. "Where
are we going?"
Lily asked, clutching her brother protectively as the adults moved with urgent efficiency around her. "Somewhere safe," Robert assured her, "a place Eric doesn't know about." Within an hour, they were on the road in Robert's personal vehicle, headed away from the city. The security professional followed in a separate car, maintaining discreet surveillance. "I have a lake house in Michigan," Robert explained, as Chicago's skyline receded in the rearview mirror. "It's isolated, secure, and registered under a corporate name. We'll be safe there while we figure out next steps." Jessica sat rigid in the passenger seat, one hand reaching back to maintain contact with Lily. "How did he find us? We were so careful." Robert's expression darkened. "The essay. It was published with Lily's full name and school. There was enough detail about your situation that anyone who knew you could make the connection." The realization hit Jessica like a physical blow. Her daughter's moment of triumph had inadvertently led their abuser right to them. "This is my fault. I should never have let her enter that competition." "No," Robert said firmly. "This is Eric's fault. Only his. You and Lily deserve to live your lives fully, not in hiding. We'll deal with this properly, through legal channels." Jessica didn't respond, her mind already formulating contingency plans. If Eric had found them once, he could find them again. Perhaps she should take the children and disappear completely, even from Robert. Start fresh somewhere Eric would. Never think to look. As if reading her thoughts, Robert reached across to briefly squeeze her hand. "We're in this together, Jessica. All of us. Remember what Lily wrote. A real family stands together when the world feels dark." In the back seat, Lily had fallen asleep holding Noah's hand, exhausted by the emotional turmoil of the day. Noah watched the passing scenery with curious eyes, babbling quietly to himself, blissfully unaware of the danger that had nearly touched their lives. "I won't let him hurt them," Jessica whispered fiercely. "I'll do whatever it takes." "We'll do whatever it takes," Robert corrected gently. "You're not alone anymore." As they drove north toward the secluded sanctuary of Robert's lake house, none of them could have anticipated how Eric's reappearance would catalyze the final transformation of their improvised family unit, or the remarkable courage Lily would display in the coming confrontation that would determine their future once and for all. Robert's lake house turned out to be a substantial understatement. The house was actually a modern, architect-designed retreat nestled among towering pines on a private peninsula, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Lake Michigan's crystalline waters. Under different circumstances, it would have felt like a luxury vacation. Instead, it was their fortress against an uncertain threat. During their first evening, Jessica barely spoke, moving mechanically through the motions of settling the children while her mind raced with contingency plans. Lily, perceptive as always, stayed close to her mother, helping with Noah and speaking in hushed tones, as if afraid that normal volume might shatter the fragile calm. "Will the bad man find us here?" she asked as Jessica tucked her into bed in one of the guest rooms. Jessica smoothed Lily's hair back from her forehead, choosing her words carefully. "No, sweetheart. This place is very safe, Mr. Robert. I made sure of that." Lily studied her mother's face with those wise eyes that always saw too much. "You're scared, though." "I'm concerned," Jessica corrected gently. "That's what moms do. We worry so our children don't have to. But you and Noah are safe, I promise." After the children were asleep, Jessica found Robert on the deck, overlooking the lake. The security system's control panel opened beside him as he verified the property's defenses. "The perimeter sensors are active," he informed her without looking up. "Motion detection, infrared cameras, cellular backup if the power or internet goes down. No one can approach within a quarter-mile without us knowing." Jessica wrapped her arms around herself against the cool night air. "You seem very practiced at this." Robert finally looked up, fatigue evident in his face. "When you build a business empire, you make enemies. Corporate espionage, competitors, occasional threats. Nothing like this, but enough to warrant precautions." "How long can we stay here?" Jessica asked, taking a seat on the adjacent chair. "As long as necessary," Robert replied simply. "I've arranged to work remotely for the next few weeks. Lily can continue her schoolwork online. Her teacher was very understanding about the family emergency I described." "And then what?" Jessica pressed, needing to see beyond the immediate crisis. We can't hide forever. My job, Lily's school, Noah's development programs. We're not hiding. We're regrouping, Robert corrected gently. I've already contacted Jeremy Winters, the best family law attorney in Chicago. He's preparing emergency restraining orders based on today's incident and your previous documentation of Eric's abuse. Jessica laughed bitterly. Restraining orders are just paper. They don't stop bullets. Robert flinched at her bluntness but didn't disagree. They're just the first step. Jeremy is also preparing custody paperwork that will legally terminate Eric's parental rights to Noah based on abandonment and documented abuse. Once that's in place, Eric will have no legal claim to either child. And you think he'll just accept that? Jessica challenged. A man who tracked us down and tried to abduct my daughter from school? No, Robert acknowledged. I think he'll fight, which is exactly what we want. In court, not on the streets. Every aggressive move he makes strengthens our legal position. Jessica fell silent, processing Robert's strategy. It was logical, methodical, privileged, the approach of someone who believed in systems and institutions. Her experience had taught her that such systems often failed those who needed them most. There's something else we need to discuss, Robert continued carefully. The security team did some preliminary investigation. Eric appears to be in significant financial trouble. Gambling debts, unpaid loans, possible connections to some unsavory characters. Jessica tensed. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that his sudden interest in Noah might not be purely paternal, Robert replied gently. He may see the child as leverage for financial gain, especially now that he's aware of my involvement through Lily's essay. The implication hung heavy in the air between them. Eric might be seeking to extort money in exchange for relinquishing his parental claims, or worse, threatening the children's safety unless his demands were met. Then pay him, Jessica said flatly. Whatever he wants, if it makes him go away permanently. Robert studied her carefully. Is that really what you want? To teach the children that threats and violence can be rewarded? That Lily's abuser can name his price and walk away enriched? I want my children safe, Jessica snapped, rising from her chair. I don't care about moral lessons or legal principles. If money makes him disappear, it's worth any price. And when he comes back for more? Robert questioned softly. Because he will. Men like Eric always do. Jessica had no answer for that, the truth of his words cutting through her desperate reasoning. She turned away, staring out at the moonlit lake, tears of frustration burning her eyes. I feel so powerless, she whispered. Again, just like before. Robert stood and moved beside her, careful to maintain a respectful distance. You are not powerless, Jessica. You saved yourself and your children from him once already, with no resources and no support. Now you have both. Before she could respond, a subtle chime from the security panel alerted them to movement on the property. Robert immediately accessed the camera feeds, tension visible in his shoulders until he identified the source. It's just a deer, near the north sensor, he confirmed. The brief moment of alarm breaking their emotional standoff. We should get some rest. Tomorrow will be a full day of legal strategizing with Jeremy via video conference. Jessica nodded, exhaustion suddenly overwhelming her. As she turned to head inside, Robert gently caught her wrist. We will get through this, he promised. All of us, together. For the first time since the crisis began, Jessica allowed herself to believe him, just a little. The following days established a new routine at the lake house. Mornings were dedicated to legal meetings, with Robert and Jessica hunched over laptops conferring with attorneys, providing statements to police, and building their case against Eric. Afternoons belonged to the children. Nature walks along, the private shoreline, impromptu science lessons about local wildlife, and quiet reading sessions that helped restore some normalcy to Lily's disrupted education. Noah thrived in the peaceful environment, taking his first unassisted steps across the living room's plush carpet 5 days into their stay, prompting a celebration that momentarily pushed their worries aside. Lily gradually relaxed her vigilance, venturing further from Jessica's side to explore the property's wonders under the watchful eye of Robert's security team. A week into their exile, Jessica received the call she'd been dreading. Dr. Chen, concerned about the abrupt interruption to their therapy and aware of the general situation through Robert's discreet explanation, had reached out to check on her mental state. "How are you managing, Jessica?" the therapist asked during their secure video session. "Truly?" Jessica glanced around the luxurious bedroom she'd claimed as her private space, wondering how to articulate the complicated storm of emotions within her. "I'm functioning," she finally answered, "for the children. And for yourself." "That's less clear," Jessica admitted. "I feel like I'm balancing on a knife's edge. Part of me wants to gather the children and run as far as possible. Another part wants to stay and fight. And a third part is terrified that either choice will ultimately fail." Dr. Chen nodded understanding. "Those are all natural responses to a perceived threat to your family. The question is, which response serves your long-term healing and the children's well-being?" "Running would mean starting over with nothing again," Jessica reasoned aloud. "New identities, new schools, constant looking over our shoulders. The children deserve stability." "And the other option?" Jessica's hands clenched in her lap. "Staying means trusting Robert completely, trusting the legal system, trusting that Eric can be contained through official channels. Is that trust warranted based on your experience so far?" Dr. Chen prompted gently. The question forced Jessica to confront a truth she'd been avoiding. Over the past 4 months, Robert had proven himself consistently reliable, patient, and genuine in his care for her family. He'd respected her boundaries, supported her autonomy, and demonstrated commitment even when it became personally costly. "Robert isn't Eric," she acknowledged quietly. "I know that intellectually, but emotionally you're still processing trauma that taught you all male authority figures are potentially dangerous." Dr. Chen completed the thought. "That's not something that disappears overnight. Jessica, the fact that you can distinguish between the two intellectually is already significant progress." Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Robert's voice came through, tense but controlled. "Jessica, Jeremy needs to speak with us immediately. Something's happened." Jessica ended the call with Dr. Chen and hurried to the study where Robert was already connected to a video conference with their attorney. Jeremy Winters's normally composed face showed visible concern. "We've received a formal petition from Eric Thompson's attorney demanding immediate visitation. Rights with Noah," Jeremy explained without preamble. "They're claiming parental alienation and citing Lily's published essay as evidence that a third party, specifically Robert, is attempting to replace Eric in his son's life." Jessica felt the blood drain from her face. He has an attorney? How he could barely keep a job for more than a few weeks? "That's the concerning part," Jeremy continued. "He's being represented by Madison and Crane, a firm that typically handles high-net-worth divorce cases. Someone with significant resources is backing him." Robert's expression darkened. "Can you find out who?" "We're working on it," Jeremy assured them. "In the meantime, we need to respond to this petition. The good news is that the school incident strengthens our position substantially. The police report clearly states that Eric attempted to remove Lily without authorization, which demonstrates a pattern of inappropriate behavior." "What's our next step?" Jessica asked, struggling to maintain composure. "I've filed emergency motions for full protection orders for both children and for you, Jessica. Given the documented history and recent incident, we have strong grounds. However," Jeremy hesitated, "the judge may still grant Eric limited supervised visitation with Noah while the case proceeds. It's standard practice to maintain some parent-child contact unless there's direct evidence of abuse toward that specific child." Jessica's knuckles whitened as she gripped the edge of the desk. "He abandoned Noah as an infant. He's never provided a day of support, never shown any interest until now, which will work strongly in our favor for the final custody determination," Jeremy assured her. "But the immediate visitation question is more complex. Courts are reluctant to sever all contact without compelling evidence." "So what you're saying," Robert interjected, "is that despite everything, the court might force Noah to spend time with a man who has shown violent tendencies and who tried to abduct his sister." In a controlled environment with supervision, yes, Jeremy confirmed reluctantly. It's a possibility we need to prepare for. After the call ended, Jessica paced the study like a caged animal. This is exactly why I don't trust the system. 4 months of healing, of building safety, and now a judge could undo everything with the stroke of a pen. Robert watched her, concern evident in his eyes. Jeremy is excellent at his job. He's presenting our strongest case. But he can't guarantee the outcome, Jessica countered. No one can. Before Robert could respond, Lily appeared in the doorway. Noah balanced on her hip in a practiced pose that always made her look far older than her 8 years. "Is the bad man coming here?" she asked directly, confirming she'd overheard at least part of their conversation. Jessica immediately moderated her expression, kneeling to her daughter's level. "No, sweetheart. He doesn't know where we are. We're just talking about some legal papers." Lily wasn't fooled. "It's about Noah, isn't it? His dad wants to take him away." Robert joined Jessica, addressing Lily with the straightforward respect he always showed her. "Eric has asked the court for permission to see Noah sometimes. The judges will decide what's safest for everyone." "But Noah doesn't even know who." "He is," Lily protested, tightening her grip on her brother. "And he tried to trick me at school." "The judges will know about that too," Robert assured her. "That's why we talked to the police, to make sure everyone understands what kind of person Eric is." Lily considered this with the solemn thoughtfulness that continually surprised the adults in her life. "I could tell the judges what he was like when he lived with us," she offered. "I remember everything." Jessica's heart clenched at the reminder of what her daughter had witnessed. "That's very brave of you, Lily, but you don't need to worry about that right now." "But I want to help," Lily insisted. "Noah's too little to speak for himself. Someone has to tell them how Eric used to break things and call you bad names and make you cry." Robert and Jessica exchanged glances, silently acknowledging the potential impact of Lily's first-hand testimony. Child witnesses were typically shielded from court proceedings, but a recorded statement from Lily might significantly influence the judge's perspective. "Let's talk about that possibility with Jeremy," Robert suggested carefully. "If, and only if, he thinks it would help Noah and wouldn't be too difficult for you, Lily." "I'm not scared," Lily declared, with the absolute certainty of childhood. "Not anymore. Not with you and Mom protecting us." That evening, after the children were asleep, Jessica found Robert in the kitchen making tea, his expression distant as he stared out at the darkened lake. "You've been avoiding me since the call with Jeremy," she observed, taking a seat at the island counter. Robert turned, offering a tired smile. "Not avoiding, processing. This situation has become more complicated than I anticipated." "Because of Eric's mysterious legal support?" "Partly," Robert acknowledged, sliding a mug of chamomile tea toward her, "but also because of something Jeremy mentioned privately after you left the call." Jessica tensed. "What didn't you tell?" "Me?" Robert hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Eric's attorney submitted some concerning allegations about the nature of our relationship and its impact on the children." "What allegations exactly?" "They're suggesting that our living arrangement is inappropriate," Robert explained reluctantly, "that I've used my financial resources to replace Eric in his son's life, and that you've accepted my support in exchange for certain considerations." Jessica stared at him, momentarily speechless before understanding dawned. "They're implying I'm what? Your kept woman? That I traded my children's affection for financial security?" "Something like that," Robert confirmed grimly. "It's a despicable tactic, but one that might resonate with a traditional judge." "And Jeremy's recommendation?" Robert met her gaze directly. "He believes we need to clearly define our relationship, one way or another, before the first hearing. Either establish that we're merely friends with a landlord-tenant arrangement or, Jessica prompted when he didn't continue, "or acknowledge that our relationship has evolved into something more personal," Robert finished quietly. "Which would then require us to demonstrate the stability and appropriateness of that relationship." The implications hung between them, forcing a conversation they'd been carefully avoiding for months. The growing affection between them had remained largely unspoken, conveyed through small gestures, lingering glances, and the comfortable domesticity they'd established, despite their unusual circumstances. "So we're being forced to define something that we've barely acknowledged ourselves," Jessica summarized, her voice carefully neutral. "Jeremy believes it would strengthen our position either way," Robert explained. Clarity over ambiguity. Jessica wrapped her hands around the warm mug, buying time to order her thoughts. "And what do you believe, Robert? Not as Noah's advocate or our financial supporter or Lily's mentor, just as yourself." Robert took a deep breath, setting down his own mug with deliberate care. "I believe that I've spent 10 years existing rather than living. I believe that meeting you and the children awakened something I thought had died with Eleanor. And I believe that whatever happens with Eric and the courts, I want to remain in your lives, in whatever capacity you'll allow." The raw honesty of his declaration stripped away Jessica's carefully maintained defenses. For months, she'd attributed his generosity to charity, to loneliness, to the businessman's desire to solve problems with resources. She'd deliberately overlooked the growing warmth in his eyes when he watched her with the children, the subtle ways he sought her opinion and respected her decisions, the joy he took in being included in their small family rituals. "I'm still healing," she reminded him softly. "There are days when I can barely trust myself, let alone anyone else." "I know," Robert acknowledged. "I'm not asking for declarations or commitments. I'm just asking that we stop pretending this is still a temporary arrangement born of charity. Whatever happens next, we face it honestly, with ourselves and with the courts." Jessica studied him across the kitchen island, this man who had upended his carefully ordered life to embrace the chaos of hers, who had never once made her feel indebted for his help, who treated her wounded spirit with patient respect and her children with genuine affection. "The courts will want a clear narrative," she said finally, "one that explains why a wealthy businessman would involve himself so deeply in the lives of a homeless woman and her children. The truth usually works best," Robert suggested, "that we met by chance, developed a friendship based on mutual respect, and discovered that together we created something none of us had separately, a family." The word hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning and possibility. Jessica wasn't ready to name the emotions Robert stirred in her, but she could no longer deny their existence. "Jeremy wants a defined relationship to present to the court," she acknowledged. "But the children need consistency, not confusion. If we acknowledge whatever this is between us, well, it can't be a legal strategy. It has to be real." Robert nodded solemnly. "I wouldn't have it any other way." Before Jessica could respond, the security system chimed. Not the gentle alert of wildlife, but the urgent signal indicating a vehicle approaching the property's main gate. Robert immediately accessed the security panel, tension visible in every line of his body. "It's a sheriff's department vehicle," he reported, zooming in on the camera feed. "2 officers." Jessica's heart raced as she joined him at the monitor. "How would they know we're here? This property isn't in your name." "It's registered to my management company," Robert explained grimly. "If Eric's new legal team has resources, they could have traced the connection." The security intercom buzzed and a formal voice came through the speaker. "This is Deputy Wallace with the Oceana County Sheriff's Department. We have court documents to serve to Jessica Collins regarding custody of minor child Noah Thompson." Jessica and Robert exchanged alarmed glances. The battle they'd been preparing for had arrived sooner than expected, with Eric's first strategic move catching them off guard despite all their precautions. "We have to let them in," Robert said quietly. "Refusing service will only strengthen Eric's position." As Robert buzzed the gate open, Jessica stood frozen in the kitchen, a single thought dominating her mind. The moment of reckoning had arrived, and the family they'd so carefully built now faced its greatest test. What neither of them yet realized was that Eric's legal maneuver would force them to make decisions they'd been avoiding for months, decisions that would permanently alter the course of all their lives and ultimately reveal the true meaning of Lily's innocent wisdom about what makes a real family. The Chicago Family Court building stood imposing against the bright blue sky of early summer, its limestone facade a symbol of institutional power that had Jessica gripping Robert's hand with nervous tension. 3 weeks had passed since the sheriff's deputies had delivered the court summons at the lake house. 3 weeks of intense preparation, legal consultations, and difficult conversations about their future. "Remember what Jeremy said," Robert murmured as they climbed the broad stone steps. "Stay calm. Answer only what's asked and let the evidence speak for itself." Jessica nodded, adjusting Noah on her hip. The toddler, now 14 months old, was dressed in his best clothes, oblivious to the significance of the day. Beside them, Lily walked with uncharacteristic solemnity, her small hand clasped firmly in Robert's. The initial hearing had established temporary arrangements while the full custody case proceeded: supervised visitation for Eric with Noah, once weekly at a court-approved facility, and continuation of the restraining order protecting Lily based on the school incident. Today marked the beginning of the full evidentiary hearings that would determine Noah's permanent custody arrangement. Their attorney, Jeremy Winters, waited in the lobby, his confident demeanor providing a small measure of reassurance. "We're in Judge Harriet Monroe's courtroom," he informed them. "That's good news. She has a strong record of prioritizing children's welfare over parental rights when safety is concerned." As they made their way through security and up to the designated floor, Jessica caught sight of Eric for the first time in over a year. He stood with his attorney near the courtroom doors, clean-shaven, hair neatly trimmed, dressed in a suit that was clearly new and expensive. The transformation from the disheveled, volatile man she remembered was jarring. Eric noticed them simultaneously, his eyes immediately fixing on Noah. Something possessive flashed across his face before his attorney placed a warning hand on his arm, murmuring something that caused Eric to compose his expression into one of paternal concern. "Ignore him," Robert advised quietly, subtly positioning himself between Jessica and her former abuser. "That's exactly what they want, to provoke a reaction they can use against you." Jessica forced herself to look away, focusing instead on Lily, who had gone rigid at the sight of Eric. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered, kneeling to her daughter's level. "He can't hurt us anymore. That's why we're here, to make sure of it." Inside the courtroom, the proceedings began with formal introductions and establishment of the case parameters. Judge Monroe, a stern-faced woman in her 60s with shrewd eyes that seemed to miss nothing, reviewed the preliminary filings with methodical attention. "This court's primary concern is the welfare of the minor child, Noah Thompson," she stated firmly. "All other considerations are secondary. Let's begin with the petitioner's case." Eric's attorney, Victoria Madison, presented a carefully crafted narrative, one that painted Eric as a reformed man who had overcome addiction issues and employment instability to become a responsible citizen seeking connection with his biological son. She strategically acknowledged his past mistakes while emphasizing his recent efforts at rehabilitation. Mr. Thompson has maintained sobriety for 10 months, secured stable employment, completed parenting classes, and established appropriate housing for visitation, Madison explained. He recognizes that his past behavior was unacceptable, but he is committed to building a relationship with his son and being a positive influence in Noah's life. When Eric took the stand, he delivered a performance of contrition and determination that might have been convincing to someone who hadn't witnessed his true nature. He spoke of regrettable actions taken during a difficult period in his life and his heartbreak at being separated from his son during Noah's formative months. "I just want the chance to be a father to my son," he concluded, his voice breaking slightly for effect. "Every boy needs his dad." Throughout this testimony, Jessica maintained a neutral expression through sheer force of will, though her nails dug painfully into her palms beneath the table. Robert remained equally composed, though the tension in his jaw betrayed his true feelings. The calculated manipulation became clearer when Madison introduced their key argument, that Jessica had deliberately alienated Noah from his father by entering into a relationship with Robert, a wealthy man who could provide financial advantages Eric couldn't match. Ms. Collins chose to replace her child's biological father with a financial benefactor, Madison argued. And while Mr. Westfield's generosity is admirable, it does not give him the right to supersede Mr. Thompson's paternal relationship. No amount of money should be allowed to sever the natural bond between father and son. When it was their turn to present, Jeremy methodically dismantled this narrative with documentary evidence, police reports of Eric's violent episodes, medical records of Jessica's PTSD diagnosis, testimony from the school security guard regarding the attempted abduction, and financial records showing Eric had never provided a single dollar of support for Noah, despite court orders to do so. Most compelling was the video deposition Lily had insisted on providing. The judge's expression softened visibly as the 8-year-old recounted with simple, devastating honesty the environment Eric had created during his time with their family. He would break Mom's things when he got angry, Lily explained calmly. So he called her bad names and said she was stupid. Sometimes he would push her. One time he threw his phone and it hit the wall near Noah's crib and made Noah cry, but he just yelled louder. When asked about Robert, Lily's face brightened. Mr. Robert never yells. He helps Mum when she's sad, and he reads me stories, and he taught Noah how to clap his hands. He makes us feel safe. The contrast couldn't have been more stark, and Jessica saw the impact in Judge Monroe's thoughtful expression as she made notes. The pivotal moment came during cross-examination when Madison attempted to portray Jessica's relationship with Robert as opportunistic. Ms. Collins, isn't it true that you and your children were homeless before meeting Mr. Westfield? Madison asked, her tone deliberately sympathetic yet subtly accusatory. Yes, Jessica answered simply. We were living under an overpass after fleeing Eric's abuse. And Mr. Westfield, a wealthy bachelor, offered you housing, financial support, and other benefits shortly after meeting you. He offered us emergency shelter during a blizzard, Jessica corrected. The other support developed gradually as he came to know us as people, not charity cases. Madison smiled thinly. But you must admit the arrangement has been quite beneficial to you financially. Housing, education for your daughter, medical care for your son, things you couldn't provide independently. Jessica felt Robert tense beside her, but Jeremy had prepared her for this line of questioning. The arrangement has benefited all of us, she replied steadily. Robert gained a family after years of isolation following his wife's passing. The children gained stability and safety. And yes, I gained resources to provide better for my children. That's what families do, support each other in different ways. So you acknowledge that your relationship with Mr. Westfield is romantic in nature, Madison pressed, seizing on the word family. Jessica paused, meeting Robert's gaze briefly before answering. Our relationship evolved from friendship to something deeper over time. We didn't plan it, but we don't deny it either. How convenient, Madison remarked with calculated skepticism. And when exactly did this romance bloom? Before or after you became aware of Mr. Thompson's petition for custody? Jessica felt heat rise in her cheeks, but maintained her composure. Emotions don't follow legal timetables, Miss Madison. Robert and I grew closer gradually through shared experiences and mutual respect. We've been careful to maintain appropriate boundaries because of my recovery process and the children's needs. The questioning continued for hours, with Madison attempting to characterize their unconventional family as a calculated arrangement, while Jeremy methodically reinforced the documented history of Eric's abuse and abandonment contrasted with Robert's consistent support. When Robert took the stand, his testimony cut through the legal maneuvering with simple sincerity. He spoke of his first encounter with Lily at the convenience store, the immediate connection he felt to the determined child, and the gradual process of earning Jessica's trust. I never intended to replace Noah's biological father, he stated firmly. But when that father abandoned his responsibilities and endangered his family, I couldn't stand by and do nothing. Every child deserves safety, stability, and love, regardless of biology. The most damaging testimony against Eric came unexpectedly when Jeremy called a surprise witness, Carlos Ramirez, a former associate of Eric's from his gambling days. Ramirez testified that Eric had approached him 3 months earlier, asking for help contacting people who might put pressure on Jessica to relinquish custody. He said there was big money involved, Ramirez explained. He knew the kid's mom was living with some rich guy, and he figured he could get a payout to walk away. But he needed leverage first, needed to scare them into thinking he could take the kid. Eric's outburst at this revelation, half rising, from his seat with a muttered profanity before his attorney restrained him, did more damage to his case than any testimony could have. Judge Monroe's sharp reprimand and warning about contempt only reinforced the contrast between the two men in Noah's life. At the end of the exhausting day, Judge Monroe announced she would review all evidence and deliver her ruling the following morning. "This court does not make custody determinations lightly," she stated firmly. "I will consider all factors, with the child's best interests as my North Star." That evening, in the hotel suite they'd reserved near the courthouse, Jessica paced anxiously while Robert put the children to bed. The day's testimony had forced them to publicly acknowledge feelings they'd only recently begun to discuss privately, a pressure that left Jessica feeling exposed and vulnerable. "You've worn a path in the carpet," Robert observed gently as he emerged from the children's room. "They're both finally asleep." Jessica stopped pacing but remained standing, arms wrapped protectively around herself. "I feel like we've handed our fate to a complete stranger. No matter how fair Judge Monroe seems, she doesn't know us, not really." "She knows the facts," Robert reminded her, "and the facts are on our side." "Facts don't always determine outcomes," Jessica countered. "If they did, Eric would never have been granted visitation in the first place." Robert approached cautiously, respecting her need for space. "Jeremy believes we've made a compelling case. Ramirez's testimony was particularly damaging to Eric's claims of reformation." "But what if it's not enough?" Jessica whispered, voicing her deepest fear. "What if she grants him unsupervised visitation, or worse, partial custody? Noah's so young. He won't understand why he's suddenly being taken from everything familiar and secure." "We'll appeal if necessary," Robert assured her. "Fight every step of the way." Jessica finally met his gaze directly. "You said we, even after the way Madison portrayed our relationship. The insinuations about your motives?" "Especially after that," Robert replied without hesitation, "because she got one thing right. We are a family now, in all the ways that matter. Maybe not in the traditional sense, and certainly not on the timeline we might have chosen, but a family nonetheless." The simple declaration broke through Jessica's remaining defenses. The stress of the hearing, combined with months of emotional guardedness, finally overwhelmed her composure. Silent tears slipped down her cheeks as Robert carefully gathered her into his arms. "I'm so tired of fighting," she confessed against his shoulder. "First Eric, then my own trauma, now the courts. It never ends." "It will end," Robert promised. "Maybe tomorrow, maybe after more battles, but eventually we'll win because we're fighting for something real, something worth protecting." They stayed that way for long moments, finding comfort in the physical affirmation of their bond. When Jessica finally stepped back, wiping away tears, her expression had shifted from despair to determination. "Whatever happens tomorrow," she said firmly, "I want you to know that the children and I were saved by your kindness long before. We knew the court battle was coming. You chose us when you had no obligation to, and that choice changed everything." Robert touched her face gently. "You saved me too, Jessica. You and the children brought life back into my world when I'd forgotten what it meant to truly live." The following morning, they returned to the courtroom with renewed resolve. Lily insisted on attending the ruling, her small face solemn with understanding beyond her years. Even Noah seemed to sense the gravity of the occasion, remaining unusually quiet in Robert's arms. Judge Monroe entered promptly at 9, her expression revealing nothing as she took her seat and arranged her notes. The courtroom fell silent, the tension palpable as all parties awaited her decision. "Having reviewed all testimony and evidence in this matter," she began formally, "I am prepared to rule on the petition for custody of minor child Noah Thompson." Jessica reached for Robert's hand, gripping it tightly as the judge continued. "This court has been presented with two starkly different narratives regarding what serves the best interests of this child. On one side, a biological father seeking to establish a relationship after a significant absence. On the other, A mother who has demonstrated extraordinary resilience in protecting her children from documented abuse, with the support of a consistent father figure who, while not biologically related, has proven his commitment through actions rather than mere words. Judge Monroe looked directly at Eric. "Mr. Thompson, while the court acknowledges your stated desire to be part of your son's life, your actions speak louder than your testimony. The evidence clearly establishes a pattern of abuse, abandonment, and concerning motives regarding your sudden interest in custody. The testimony regarding your apparent interest in financial gain, rather than your son's welfare, is particularly troubling." She turned to Jessica and Robert. "Miss Collins, Mr. Westfield, the stable environment you have created together, despite unconventional beginnings, demonstrates a commitment to these children that this court finds both genuine and admirable. The progress Ms. Collins has made in her recovery, with appropriate therapeutic support, and the academic and social development of both children in your care speak to the security and nurturing atmosphere you have established." Taking a deep breath, Judge Monroe delivered her ruling. "Therefore, it is the decision of this court to grant full legal and physical custody of Noah Thompson to Jessica Collins, with no visitation rights granted to Eric Thompson at this time." Jessica exhaled sharply, tears of relief filling her eyes as she pulled Noah closer. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "this court grants the petition for a permanent restraining order protecting Jessica Collins, Lily Collins, and Noah Thompson from Eric Thompson, requiring him to maintain a distance of no less than 500 feet at all times and prohibiting all contact, direct or indirect." Eric slammed his hand on the table, rising halfway before his attorney yanked him back down, whispering urgently in his ear. Judge Monroe fixed him with a stern glare, but continued without direct comment on his outburst. "Finally, regarding the matter of financial support, the court orders Eric Thompson to fulfill all previously established child support obligations, with payments to be garnished directly from any future employment wages. The court notes that Mr. Thompson's failure to provide any support to date would typically result in penalties. However, given Ms. Collins's request to waive these in exchange for the permanent restraining order, the court will honor that preference." With a final tap of her gavel, Judge Monroe concluded, "This court retains jurisdiction for enforcement of these orders. We are adjourned." The aftermath passed in a blur. Jeremy's congratulations, the security team escorting them safely from the building while Eric was deliberately detained inside, the celebration dinner at a restaurant with a private room where Lily could finally relax her vigilance and behave like the child she was. It wasn't until much later, after the children were asleep in their hotel beds, that Jessica and Robert had a moment alone on the suite's balcony, overlooking the Chicago skyline. "It's really over," Jessica marveled, still processing the day's victory. "Noah is safe. We're all safe." "The legal battle is over," Robert agreed, "but our story is just beginning." Jessica turned to him, illuminated by the city lights and the freedom of having finally secured her children's future. "What happens now? We go back to the apartment, resume our lives?" Robert took her hands in his expression serious yet hopeful. "If that's what you want, or, Jessica prompted, echoing their conversation from weeks earlier. "Or we could make this family official," Robert suggested quietly. "Not right away, we should give ourselves and the children time to adjust, to be sure. But eventually, if you're willing, I'd like to formally adopt Lily and Noah, and I'd like to ask you to consider becoming my wife." Jessica's breath caught at the unexpected proposal. "Robert, are you sure? The children and I come with so much baggage, so many challenges." "I've never been more certain of anything," he replied simply. "These past 6 months have shown me what matters in life, and it isn't stock portfolios or corporate acquisitions. It's the family we've built together, complicated, unconventional, and absolutely perfect in its imperfection." Jessica studied him in the moonlight, this man who had walked into their lives by chance and stayed by choice, who had seen her at her most broken and never once made her feel diminished by it, who loved her children as his own. "I can't give you an answer tonight," she said honestly. Not because I don't care for you, but because I need to be certain that any decision I make comes from strength, not fear or gratitude." Robert nodded, understanding as always. "Take all the time you need. We have that luxury now." "But I can tell you this," Jessica continued, moving closer to him. "Whatever happens next, we face it together, as a family." Their kiss beneath the Chicago stars sealed a promise that had begun on a snowy December night with a child's simple vow: "I'll pay you back someday." 15 years later, the Chicago Tribune's Sunday Culture section featured a prominent article about upcoming book releases, with particular attention to a debut collection of short stories by promising young author Lily Collins Westfield. Promises We Keep explores the complexity of family bonds forged through adversity rather than biology, the reviewer wrote. Collins Westfield draws on personal experience to craft stories of remarkable emotional depth, examining how moments of unexpected kindness can transform lives across generations. In the author photo, Lily stood confidently between her parents, Jessica Collins Westfield, now a respected counselor specializing in trauma recovery and domestic violence intervention, and Robert Westfield, who had shifted much of his business empire toward affordable housing initiatives and family support programs in recent years. Beside them stood Noah, a handsome teenager whose only memories of early hardship came from family stories rather than personal experience. The book's release coincided with another significant milestone, the 15th anniversary of that fateful night at Miller's 24-hour mart. To mark the occasion, Lily had insisted on a particular errand before her first official book signing. The convenience store had changed little over the years, though the neighborhood around it had improved. Sam Miller had retired, passing the business to his son Michael, but still helped out occasionally. It was Sam who was behind the counter when the bell jingled and the Collins Westfield family entered. "Well, I'll be," Sam exclaimed, recognizing Robert immediately, and then with growing amazement, the confident young woman beside him. "Is that little Lily, the girl from the snowstorm?" "It's me, Mr. Miller," Lily confirmed with a warm smile, "and I've come to keep a promise." From her purse, she withdrew an envelope and handed it across the counter. 15 years ago, I promised to pay you back for diapers, wipes, and food when I grew up. Today, I'm fulfilling that promise." Sam opened the envelope with trembling fingers to find a check, not for the small amount those original items had cost, but for a substantial donation to the children's shelter he had supported for decades. "I've never forgotten your kindness. That night," Lily continued. "In fact, I've written about it in my first book, how a simple act of compassion can create ripples that transform lives." "I didn't do anything special," Sam protested, blinking back tears. "Anyone would have helped a child in need." "But not everyone did," Robert noted quietly. "You did. And that made all the difference." Jessica, who had remained silent, finally spoke. "We wanted you to know that your kindness that night wasn't just about diapers or shelter. It was the first step toward healing for all of us. It showed me that good people still existed in the world when I'd almost lost faith in humanity." "I tell your story all the time," Sam admitted, "about the little girl who promised to pay me back someday. I use it to remind people that honor and determination can exist even in the youngest hearts." Noah, who had been examining the candy display with teenage casualness, joined the conversation. "Mom and Dad say that night changed everything. That promises matter even when they're hard to keep." "Especially then," Lily corrected with the wisdom that had always been her hallmark. "A promise kept against all odds is what builds trust. And trust is what builds families, the ones we're born into and the ones we create along the way." As they left the store to head to Lily's book signing, Robert's arm around Jessica's waist and Noah walking ahead with his sister, they embodied the truth at the heart of Lily's stories, that family isn't defined by blood or circumstance, but by the daily choice to stand together when the world feels dark, to believe in each other when it's hard to believe in yourself, and to keep the promises made when they matter most. The promise of a desperate child on a snowy night had indeed been kept, not just through a charitable donation, but through the lives